Please welcome to the stage founder and CEO of Web Summit, Paddy Cosgrave.
Wow, this is a packed room. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome to our second Web Summit in our incredible host country of Qatar. For those of you who have traveled from China, Japan, Brazil, the United States, and more than 120 other countries across the world, you are very, very welcome. Qatar is a gateway not just to the Middle East, but to the world. And for the next 3 days, Qatar will be Web Summit's home. It is Web Summit's home because of the vision of a brilliant person who I first met several years ago, Sheikh Jassim bin Mansour bin Jabour Al Thani. He persuaded my team and I that we should bring Web Summit to Qatar. There were other larger nations in the region, which will go unnamed, knocking on our door, but Sheikh Jassim articulated a vision unlike anyone else in the region, and now we're here. It's been the best decision that we've ever made, and I just want to say thank you, Sheikh Jassim. Before hosting our first Web Summit in Qatar, our ambition for our second year was 7,500 attendees. I'm delighted to say that more than 7,500 attendees will join us over the next 3 days. In fact, more than 25,000 attendees are in Doha this week from more than 120 countries around the world. It is beyond anything we could have expected or planned for. This incredible venue that we wondered, would we ever fill it over 5 years, is now at maximum capacity after just 2 years. We've even taken over the park outside that you'll get to experience, and it's really just beyond all our expectations. Our more than 25,000 attendees are here to network, to learn, and to do business. That's also the case for hundreds of our partners and exhibitors. Our partners who you will meet, I hope, on the floor outside over the next 3 days and on stage here include Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, IBM, TikTok, Snap, iHeart, and Huawei, to name just a few. Web Summit Qatar is also by far the largest international gathering of startups and entrepreneurs the Middle East has ever seen. A record-breaking 1,520 startups from 90 countries are exhibiting over the coming 3 days. We're also joined by many of the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, leading investment banks, and the most active venture capital funds in the world. And as for media, it's an incredible group of more than 600 CEOs, editors, and journalists from the Financial Times, Reuters, Al Jazeera, CNBC, the Wall Street Journal, and many more outlets from around the world. They're here to meet the countless incredible entrepreneurs in Qatar this week, to hear their stories, but also to tell the story of Qatar and its growing role in the world. Rapid economic growth, coupled with remarkable diplomatic skills, makes Qatar impossible to ignore. Impossible also, in my view, to ignore are the record-breaking 228 Qatari-founded startups exhibiting over the coming days. In my view, these Qatari companies are a key part of Qatar's future. Many will spend the coming days meeting with the more than 600 investors who have flown to Web Summit from around the world in search of their next investment. In fact, since Web Summit Qatar 2024, Web Summit has gathered in partnership with Crunchbase investment data, which shows that 148 companies who attended Web Summit Qatar 2024 have since raised nearly $30 billion in investment. Scale AI leads the pack. They raised $1 billion in investment just 6 months ago, and you'll hear from Scale AI CEO Alexander Wang this evening. Now let's talk about meetups. For this year's Web Summit, we've made the most significant changes in over a decade, and it all revolves around meetups. We're making it easier than ever for you to connect with the communities and groups that matter most to you and your business. It all starts with our proprietary mobile app. Meetups, both by day and by night, are now at the heart of your Web Summit experience. On our mobile app, you'll find hundreds of highly curated meetups, many tailored to your interests. You'll find the right conversations, the right people, and the right opportunities to help your business navigate the remarkable times we live in. We live in remarkable times because technology is redefining the very fabric of our shared global existence. Right before our eyes, the world's center of economic, technological, and diplomatic gravity is also shifting. I think after nearly 500 years of Western dominance, we are moving to a multipolar world, and rapidly. In a sense, all 25,000 of us in Qatar this week are here in search of answers about our rapidly changing future. And over the next 3 days, you'll find every imaginable discussion on that future. But first, we'll be joined by a very special guest, His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani, the Prime Minister of Qatar. His presence at Web Summit is a testament to Qatar's dedication to innovation and its emergence as a leading global technology hub. Thank you, and enjoy Web Summit.
Good morning, Doha. It's the 23rd of February.
Das Wetter ist perfekt mit seinen 25 Celsius.
عاد مصمم كتلة فيها هنا.
لازم الواحد يفكر شلون يستغل لأن اليوم غير.
Une balade sur la corniche, une virée en vie, faites ce qui vous plaît.
Pero yo me dirijo a DC para Web Summit. That's your plan.
وأشوفك هناك.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman bin Jassim Al Thani, the Prime Minister of Qatar.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Web Summit Qatar 2025. A year ago, we gathered here for the first Web Summit in the MENA region. Today, as we look across the same space, we see something remarkable, a vision realized, ambition surpassed, and the future unfolding before our eyes. Here in Qatar, we are creating a platform where innovation meets opportunities and partnership transform global industries. In all my travel, people ask me how Qatar is a small state, able to punch over its weight. Being a small state like Qatar is similar to being a startup in this exciting digital age, where an entrepreneur with a brilliant idea can change the world. With hard work and commitment, opportunity is open to you. That's why at the state level, we are focusing on helping startups because they embody the spirit of Qatar. We want to create opportunities for future generations, and this runs deep within our national identity, reflected in many of our domestic and international commitments. Through the catalyst of Web Summit Qatar, we are witnessing a convergence of talent, technology, and ambition, not just in Qatar, but throughout the region. Just like in many nations around the world, we are embarking on a massive deregulation campaign to unlock our economy for the private sector. Built on the back of our thriving energy sector, we are positioned for a private sector takeoff. This launch will include even more transformative partnerships across key sectors, from pioneering fintech solutions to groundbreaking climate technologies, proving that it's time to jumpstart innovation in MENA region. Esteemed guests, last year from this very stage, I announced that Qatar Investment Authority would form a $1 billion fund of funds to ensure that Qatar and the wider region had access to strategic investment capital, focused specifically on technology, innovation, and global entrepreneurship. And we delivered. QIA has signed 6 leading global investment entities to deploy capital internationally, regionally, and locally. Each of them will open offices on their regional headquarters in Qatar so that all of the MENA region can benefit from their expertise and investments. These entities represent distinct and relevant sectors, crucial to our ecosystem, from digital health technologies to fintech to clean energy solutions, AI, and manufacturing, helping us build depth and excellence across our innovation landscape. We are also doubling down on our platform, Startup Qatar, a single portal to access information, support, and funding and opportunities offered to startups and entrepreneurs. Over the past year, well over 2,000 companies applied to the Startup Qatar Investment Program from more than 60 countries around the world, including the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Turkey, and India. We are expanding this home run project and will support even more startups this year by establishing R&D offices, collaborating with local universities, and enhancing countries' AI and machine learning ecosystem. We are renovating our entire economy to make Qatar the top regional destination for startups by creating an ecosystem for companies to innovate and thrive. Ladies and gentlemen, since we last met at the launch of Web Summit Qatar, we witnessed a surge of global interest, from leading international companies to venture capital firms actively exploring opportunities in Qatar and the region. We are attracting ambitious and innovative projects, and most importantly, creating collaborations around incubators, accelerators, and venture funds. Qatar has jumped 11 positions in the worldwide startup ecosystem ranking, the highest of any country in the top 100, making us a regional technology hub. This year's summit further builds on Qatar's strengthened position as a bridge between East and West, and our unique position to foster unprecedented collaboration, uniting diverse markets and innovative minds to tackle pressing global challenges. We are giving small startups tools they need to accomplish great things, and we are nurturing the next generation of startups by offering them an environment where they can thrive and emerge as global leaders. We look forward to partnering with you and to build this future. We stand together at the brink of opportunity. Let us seize the moment to shape tomorrow, guided by purpose, powered by innovation, and anchored by our shared humanity. Thank you.
And in Qatar, we're building the future.
please give a warm welcome to your host, lead presenter for Al Jazeera English, Fali Batibao.
Assalamu alaikum. Ahlan wa salam bikum fi Doha. Good evening, everyone. My name is Foliba Thibault, a senior news anchor for Al Jazeera English based here in Doha. Over the past 2 decades, I've had the privilege of covering some of the biggest news stories in the world, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight for Web Summit Qatar's opening night, where we'll explore the impact of technology on business, culture, and our daily lives. Now, how many of you visit Reddit every day? Raise your hands. Reddit? What about sports? How many follow tennis or soccer, as the Americans call it, but we, of course, call it football, right, in this part of the world? What if I told you that our next speaker is at the intersection of these two worlds? You might know him as the co-founder of Reddit, the platform that revolutionized online communities. But his influence stretches far beyond that. As the founder of 767, he's backing some of the most groundbreaking startups across industries. A tech pioneer and a passionate advocate for the future of sports, he is shaping what's next. Fueled by his passion for sports, he's backing teams like Angel City FC, pioneering game-changing ventures like Athlos, where culture meets performance, and The Off-Season, a groundbreaking reality series diving into the lives of NWSL players. Alongside his business accomplishments, he's a dedicated father of 2 and husband to tennis legend Serena Williams, embracing these roles with the same passion he brings to his ventures. To discuss the transformation of the sports industry, please join me in welcoming to the stage CNBC's Emma Graham and Alexis Ohanian.
Alexis Ohanian, probably best known for founding Reddit. Started the company right out of college, 2005.
To be honest, it's really not about me. It's about you guys on the other end of the monitor.
These days, I'm doing my life's work at 776. I feel very fortunate. It's been fun. And I have a kid who I promised I was going to do everything I could to not just keep doing my best professionally, but do so in a way that was going to make her proud one day. Obviously, she's got a mother to be very proud of, and I want her to be just as proud of me, too.
Welcome to Doha.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
So great to have you here in Qatar.
Happy
Welcome
to
to
be
Web
here too.
Summit.
Thank you.
So we're talking today about your investment in women's sports. And your ownership started with a bit of a tweet storm, I understand.
That's right.
Tell me about that.
You know, as the guy who created Reddit, I'm very comfortable typing away on the internet in real time, for better or for worse. Sometimes it gets me in trouble, but this was one of those instances where I had seen a team in the NWSL, which is the Professional Women's Soccer League or Football League in America, had just sold for about $3 million. And one of the star players in that league, this woman, Megan Rapinoe, I didn't even follow this sport, but I was aware of her. You know, because the women's national team in America was so good, so great. In fact, I thought, well, it doesn't make any sense. Like, she's worth at least that much every year in marketing alone. How could a team, an entire team, be worth this little? And by the end of this tweet storm, I said, there's an amazing opportunity in women's professional sports. It's so undervalued. And I'm going to start by buying or beginning, starting an NWSL team. And one day, I believe it can be worth $1 billion. And this is the nature of what we do in tech. I was lucky enough to be a seed investor in Coinbase in 2012 when Brian Armstrong had a vision that Bitcoin would one day be, a very meaningful sort of digital gold, and he could build the bank for this asset. And it seemed like a crazy idea in 2012. But the amount of pushback I got for saying that a women's professional team could one day be worth $1 billion looked so different from the response I got to saying that I believed Bitcoin could be a store of value. And it just goes to show in this industry, venture capital, we get paid or we get compensated for being early and right. But there are still certain prejudices or sort of preconceived notions that hold people back from opportunities that could have done very well. I spent $1 million to buy that first franchise. This was Angel City FC. The team today is worth a little under $300 million. It is the most valuable team in women's professional sports in the world, and it's been 4.5 years. I think 5-6 years from now, we are going to see that milestone. I hope it's Angel City. But regardless, we've seen a secular shift now in the investment in emerging sports, but in particular women's sports. And I've just only gotten more and more confident in the years since in investing even more in different fields to support it. And yes, I am, you saw the husband of Serena Williams. I am a proud girl dad of 2 daughters. But don't get it twisted. None of this is about charity. None of this is about, it feels good. Yes, it does feel good for sure. If my daughters choose to play soccer when they grow up, I want them to get paid and make a living from it. But at the end of the day, it's about good business. And I think that's the opportunity in front of us.
100%. And it's about equity, as you just said. I mean, women are paid less. That's a fact. In the boardroom, on the court, on the football field, it just is a fact. How do we bridge that gap in terms of men and women's sports when we're talking monetization?
Well, look, I got to give credit where it is due. Tennis is the one exception. Tennis is the one sport where you can find this pay equity in many places. Obviously, Serena and Venus had a lot to do with that. And even before, I have to give Billie Jean King her flowers. Whenever I speak on this subject, Billie was the one who really fought for pay equity, that created an environment so that Richard and Orsine would want to push their daughters into tennis because there was a chance of getting paid. So what does it take? I think in the earliest days, it takes advocacy. It takes folks like Billie Jean King to step up and push for it. It takes the sport itself, the business around the sport, to take those investments. The Women's Soccer League had been around in America for a decade. There had been multiple attempts that had failed in the past, and this particular league had been around for a decade, but none of the investors, none of the owners really thought of it as anything other than charity. And so they were really reluctant to invest any money. And so all of a sudden I show up and I'm like, no, I want to invest millions and millions of dollars in a team that I know is going to be worth more later. It was a very different attitude than I think folks were used to. And the good news is success begets more success. And I think right now you're seeing this sweep, throughout the world. And at the end of the day, everyone realizes, especially these athletes, none of these women are looking for a handout. They all understand that the broader business needs to justify those revenues and those salaries. And so they've been incredibly patient. My goodness, many of them have pioneered for decades before there was any chance of pay equity. And now that we're seeing it on the horizon, we just had a record-breaking transfer fee. Naomi Girma, a talented defender from the US, just was signed by Chelsea. Chelsea paid $1 million for the right to sign her. And now in men's football, these transfer fees have gotten obviously very big and they're pretty well known. This was a record for women's football, but it was inconceivable 4 years ago to even have a transfer fee, maybe outside of maybe tens of thousands of dollars max. So you're starting to see the economics grow. As that, you'll see increased media deals. As the business gets healthier and healthier, it's going to flow down to the players. And I think 10 years from now, it'll be in a very different position. But it takes investment, it takes the discipline, it takes the patience, but I couldn't be more excited about the prospects.
And speaking of success, you just had an amazing event in New York City with Athlos. You had some pretty big names, Megan Thee Stallion on stage, and you really made this a cultural event, a really big event for women to just kind of enjoy their jobs, enjoy their role. What are your reflections from this, and kind of what do you see in the future?
One of the opportunities that showed itself in 2019 was, the Women's World Cup was incredibly popular, especially in America, but worldwide. And then those athletes seemed to disappear after for the next 4 years. So as we were getting ready for the Summer Olympics, I looked again and said, okay, what are the sports that capture everyone's attention but then disappear for the next 4 years? And track happened to be a perfect example of a sport where you have these giant stars like Sha'Carri or Gabby that capture our attention, that captivate us for a few weeks, and then somehow disappear, by and large, from the sort of mass media and popular culture. And so Athlos was a chance to say, okay, even riding that high of the Olympics, let's create an event that celebrates it. Let's make it a sorry to use the Americanism, but like a Super Bowl for track. Let's make this glamorous. Let's partner with amazing brands like Tiffany & Co. to design crowns. You know, these ladies are used to being given a gold medal. We can't top a gold medal, but we can come close with our own variants. And we can make it, I wanted this US Open night match energy. You know, folks are having a good time under the lights. It's a vibe. We had DJ D-Nice spinning in between the races. And it was a spectacle. Over 3 million people viewed it live in the broadcast, so great for a first event. And we sold out to a crowd that had the time of their lives. And most importantly, the women were getting record-breaking prizes for running, and they all had, you know, our North Star was make sure they have the best time. They did. We'll be doing it again in New York here later this year, and our ambitions have always been to keep growing and keep pushing, and so I'm not ready to announce anything yet, but I'd absolutely expect to see Athlos showing up in other major cities in 2026. But for the time being, our sights are set there in New York, and we're going to continue to build infrastructure to support women's track. Even just shipped an app, a sort of sister app to what we're building called Inner Circle, which lets these athletes actually monetize their social media content and in a space that is hate and harassment free. Talking to these athletes, you know, building product 101, whether it's Reddit or whether it's been Inner Circle or Athlos, is just talking to your users, talking to your power users. And one of the things we heard time and time again from women athletes in particular is that spending time on social media is so toxic. They know it's great for their brand. They know building a following helps them get bigger marketing deals, but the toxicity that they encounter, and male athletes too, for what it's worth, but for these women in particular, it's just, it's really an unpleasant place to be. So if you could reimagine what social media would look like, how would Instagram or TikTok look if it was designed first and foremost for the creators who drive so much value, the athletes? And so we built from those first principles, and we just launched. It's a brand new app, but we're already starting to see really positive signs from the community and from their fans. And this is the stuff, like you saw in the video, this is what I want to be known for. I very intentionally stepped away from the board of Reddit a few years ago, and I wanted to put my resources, my time, my wealth towards businesses that I know are going to be successful and that I obviously want to be financially great, but are also going to be things that I'll be proud to tell my kids about. And yeah, so far so good.
Amazing. I mean, when you think about how women show up on social media, I've heard you talk about this, and I want to hear more on your views, because you've said women are better content creators than men.
Sure.
And you're a girl dad. You have an amazing superstar wife. What do we do differently as women, and how do we show up on social media to men, and how are you monetizing that?
Well, look, if you look at every major social media revolution, or you know, all the big platforms, whether it was Facebook back in the day, Instagram, TikTok, Snap to a certain extent, all these major shifts have been largely driven by young women, either posting or consuming on social. I think, you know, by and large, if I can generalize here, women are more natural storytellers than men. You know, I happen to think I can tell a pretty good story. But if we think about the way social content is created, and if we think about most of the oral traditions we have in cultures all over the world, that's something often the women carry the responsibility for. And so I think it's at some level sort of a, I don't know, biological thing. And you certainly see it play out. All the major cultural trends, you know, the internet now defines the zeitgeist, the culture, in so many ways. And if you look at the early adopters of all those major social platforms, it's women over and over and over again. And these athletes, one of the reasons I love working with them is they are the opposite of entitled, whatever that is. It's some combination of humble and hardworking. And look, again, I have some great friends who are male athletes who are great humans. But if you look on the whole, these women, if you're a professional athlete today, let's say you're just starting out your career, you are a digital native, right? You're in your early 20s, you're part of that first generation that has grown up on social. And you knew as a young lady, if you wanted to have any kind of a career as a professional athlete, unless you played tennis or maybe golf, you weren't going to make a living playing that sport. You had to be your own creative director. You had to be your own marketing company, because you had to make money through the following you could build, brand deals that you could generate, and whatnot. And you combine that predisposition with the hunger and knowing that nothing's going to be handed to you, And it makes a lot of sense why, you compare that to your, typical superstar male footballer and his interest and motivation in doing things like posting on social or doing stuff on behalf of the team. Like it's often a lot harder. And look, some of that is economics. I think frankly, we'll be in a great place if, 15, 20 years from now, we have women athletes who are generating the kind of revenue that I know they will, who will be getting paid the way I know they'll be worth, who actually will think of sport as almost like not like a side hobby, but the way, I don't know if you're any NBA fans, but the way Jokic, who's one of the best players in the NBA right now, seems like he could not be more bothered to play the NBA when he'd rather just be racing his horses. And I think that will be a sign when women's sports has really made it, when you have superstars who actually are, have so many other things that they have on their minds that they don't need to even be so locked in to playing the sport.
What's your view? There's two schools of thought when it comes to social media, I think, for professional athletes, for people in the spotlight, and you've had to live most of your life on the internet. But when you think of how we show up online, do you think we should be more authentic if we're trying to build a brand, or kind of leave some to the imagination?
This is hard. I've lived online, right? I started Reddit in college, so I've spent 20 years posting on the internet. And my first job, my first real job, I had a bunch of other jobs leading up to it, but graduating school, Pizza Hut, CompUSA, parking booth. But being a CEO who had to live on Reddit, posting on social, meant I had this baptism by fire. Like, I don't know, the first month Reddit was live, the site went down, and I got bombarded with messages that said, publicly, "You're an idiot, why is the site down?" And at the time, I had to not take it personally and respond in the comments politely. And I think actually users really appreciated the transparency. But I knew every time I was in the comments, I was building enterprise value for my business. Now you take an athlete, today they'll spend, like I said, the vast majority will spend as little time as possible. They'll post, they'll leave, and they are on some level being aware of the version of themselves they're presenting online. And I do think, generally speaking, especially now in 2025, the authenticity is celebrated in most cases, but it's going to be an interesting one to navigate. I have a friend of mine, I won't say who, but very successful athlete with a son who's playing sports, and his advice to him, he's now competing, is don't spend any time reading the comments, because if you even read the good ones, then and some part of you believes them, then you have to believe some part of the bad ones. And it's not worth dipping in any of that. Don't believe any of your good press, and certainly don't pay attention to the bad. And I think it's an extension of probably the advice that I bet Serena and Venus got when they were younger about not reading any of the media about them. So I think this evolves, it continues to grow. And like I said, if platforms like Inner Circle can be successful, we'll create spaces where they can build their brands, where they can engage with their fan bases, and a lot of the most toxic parts, the hate and harassment, just will get thwarted.
And speaking of platforms, you chose to, you're a producer of The Off Season. Yes. It's your beautiful creation, and you're putting it on X. Yep. So it kind of renders networks irrelevant in some ways. Why did you choose to do that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. So started this little production company with one of the stars of the NWSL women's soccer, Midge Purse, and she had a vision for a TV show that was, imagine, so this is the Hollywood pitch, Real Housewives, but with professional athletes living in the house together. So 11, 12 stars from women's soccer living in a house during the off season. It's called the off season. Mm-hmm. Now, none of the really, tawdry, scandalous things are there. It turns out if you put a dozen professional athletes in a house together, you don't need to invent fake drama. They're naturally competitive, they're naturally dynamic. Like, it actually was a fascinating and really fun show concept. And so for a few weeks, we had them down in Miami, they produced the show. And as we were shopping it around, one of the things that was most important to Midge and these athletes was that we had final cut. And so this, I've not shared this publicly, the reason why we opted for X is because Linda, who's the CEO, and to her credit, she co-hosted the first ever Business of Women's Sports Summit with me 3 years ago in New York, before she was at NBC at the time, before she went over there. she was such a champion for what we were doing. She said, I don't need Final Cut. Make this however you want it to be. I have total confidence it's going to be successful. Like, we don't need the approval. And for whatever success I've had as an entrepreneur and investor, before then I didn't have any success as a, whatever Hollywood content maker type. So I didn't have the luxury of being able to dictate terms with these streamers. And so the fact that X was willing to say, yes, we trust you, go for it, was awesome. And 200 million views later, we had a hit on our hands, and we had a place where the audience was engaging with the content. I think that to me was the most interesting thing. You're seeing this, everyone's talked about the second screen for a while, where you're watching on your TV and you've got your mobile device. There's some future here that feels inevitable, that you're able to communicate with the rest of your fans watching the programming in the same space where you're watching it. And I don't know who's going to nail it. It's a question of, do the Netflixes and the streamers of the world build this themselves or partner, or do the upstarts, the social media platforms, get better and better at streaming? It's probably a little bit of both. But I was grateful to have them involved, and we have some big news for season 2 that I am not allowed to talk about. But it's going to be we've got some amazing partners sport-wise for the next season.
When you're ready to break that news, just give me a call, because CNBC will be ready to break that news for you.
I would love that. All right.
When you think about when you think about the future of kind of how people consume content, we just spoke about X. What worries you about these kind of forms of just everything being out there and content moderation? What worries you?
I think, look, this is something that's been talked about more and more of late. So what do I know is going to happen? Every one of us, including Reddit, is chasing TikTok's algorithm. And if any of you have spent time on TikTok, you know how good it is at feeding you more of what you want. And YouTube, Reddit, Instagram, we're all racing a similar race, but we're a little further behind. But one thing I'm certain of is that 10 years from now, and as an early stage investor and a founder, this is the only way I can think. So don't ask me for like a 1-year, 2-year prediction. It's always a decade. So a decade from now, every screen we look at should be very, very good at showing us more of what we want when we want it. And whether that's the one we're swiping, whether it's the one in our homes, imagine these screens get so good at not just picking the right thing for you at the right time, but maybe even inventing things in real time that are going to be exactly the way you'd want to see it. I'd want to see Iron Man all over again with me as Tony Stark, that sort of thing. But there's a part of us that on the one hand, it's like the little mouse that just keeps pushing the button to get the treat over and over and over again until it dies, right? There's a part of us that when we are given that kind of steady dopamine hit, it is not a good thing, right? There's a part of our humanity that I think withers because of that. But again, I'm forever an optimist. So let's assume those screens get really, really good at showing us what we want when we want it. My hope is the part of our brain that has been around for much, much longer, that survived. You and I and all of us are here because some ancestor of ours wasn't able to get the gazelle and was disappointed and learned from it and tried again the next day and eventually got the gazelle, right? There is a resilience in our humanity that needs to suffer, that needs to feel the pain of not getting what we want in order to motivate us to get it the next time or learn and improve to get better. And so while these screens get really good at feeding us what we want, I actually think there's a part of our humanity that will crave the things that make us human, and they actually look a lot less like technology and a lot more like the things our species has known for a long time. So I'm actually really bullish, and I think 10 years from now, I'm bullish on fundamentally human experiences. So I think food experiences, whether it's incredibly high-end or whether it's incredibly authentic, let's say, experiential, something in the middle that's just kind of meh will probably have a bad time. But if you need to go to that place because the experience of being there, because the atmosphere, because the quality, that is enough of a why for that to thrive. I actually think theater is going to make a comeback, and actually seeing live performers on stage is going to make a comeback, because again, we've been telling stories around a campfire much longer than we've seen them on a screen. That's only 100 years in the making versus thousands or tens of thousands of years of the oral tradition. And then I think finally sport, which probably explains a lot of why I'm so bullish on this. I will never take my daughters to go see robots playing football. I will never want to see robots hit perfect serves to one another ad infinitum, right? These are the areas of entertainment that are going to be durable 10 years from now in a world where these tools, AI, robotics, et cetera, are so great. You know, it'll help that world. It'll make us better at training. It'll make the fan experience better, but it won't be a replacement for it. And so my hope, again, as the optimist, is that these screens will get so good at showing us what we want, but it reaches a saturation point. And there will be some folks that we need to check up on in society, but my hope is the majority of people will actually, look, we'll get great use out of it. When we want to sort of turn off our brains, we'll have it and we'll get that feed. But there's a part of us that will still yearn even more for the human experiences. And if you can create or have those human experiences, travel's another one, it I think will register in an even more important way. It'll feel even better because you're so sedated the rest of the time when you're looking at a screen.
A visionary way to look at it, but I would expect no less.
I hope. I mean, look, I'm also, I don't want to imagine the WALL-E world. My founding partner, Caitlin, worked on that film when she was at Pixar, and I feel bad every time I bring it up, but there is that dystopian version of it, right, where everyone's morbidly obese in their chairs with the things on their screen, on their faces, and I want to see humanity get the benefits of this technology, but not lose the things that make us, special.
You dealt with this a lot at Reddit and its content moderation, and we touched on it before. There's some big changes in the US right now, and I want to hear your views on it. And I don't want to get political, but I do want to know what you think about the kind of Meta goes kind of MAGA and is ending its third-party fact-checking, kind of going along with X.
It was a very pragmatic change, and what I mean by that is, and we found this, and this was not intentional, but by designing Reddit in such a way that we had site-wide rules, which you could think of almost as like a sort of the federal laws, right? Some very explicit. The first rule that I implemented when I came back in 2014 was banning revenge porn. That was a very obvious thing that was good for business to ban, good for business, good for society, good for the community. It was a no-brainer. You can create these sort of federal level site-wide rules. And then by deputizing community managers to manage all these independent communities, we then give them a top-level framework of things to ban or not ban, and we can use tools to help them ban that. But then each one of them gets to curate their own version of community. And if you don't like, the particular, pick your favorite sports team. If you don't like the way, let's say the Washington Commanders, that's my team. You don't like the way those moderators are running that community, you just go make another one that's called, the better Washington Commanders community, and so forth. And I think Twitter took a very pragmatic approach. They don't have the communities like we do, but they took the pragmatic approach of saying, look, there's objective truths. The Earth revolves around the sun, or the Earth is a sphere, although that one's a contentious one on some parts of the internet, the flat earthers. But the vast majority of things we encounter are some shade of like, it is basically, it's very hard. It is impossible to do fact-checking at scale, let alone in real time, as Facebook was trying to do. And so in many ways, I think they were just winding back something that was a bad idea from the start because it was untenable. And it was setting expectations. We always want to under-promise, over-deliver. It was setting expectations that were impossible to meet. And so this area of gray to basically say, look, we're going to leave it up to the community to do a kind of community voting. And I think Twitter implemented it quite well, and it makes sense they're copying it. My hunch is, and Jack has recently spoken on this, the founder and creator of Twitter, I think we'll get to a place where we as users get to choose our algorithms. And because without a doubt, these platforms, we're all incentivized to have the best possible algorithm, not because of anything sinister, but because we want to keep people engaged. It drives revenue, it does all those things. But I think the next iteration of it is to actually let us choose the weights and levers of those algorithms so that we have a bit more agency and ownership. And my vision of this, I think if you were to build Reddit from scratch again tomorrow and said, Alexis, build it, figure out what you're going to do, I'd still want to have those high-level federal type rules. no revenge porn. This is not what we're about. Bad for community, bad for business, etc. It's an easy one. But then allow people, for the more nuanced, allow people to basically, imagine like with sliders, to sort of choose their level of tolerance. And you know, AI actually does unlock this. And this was something that when we started in 2005, we never could have imagined, but today is actually quite practical. And so I'd imagine another wave of social media platforms building this way, and probably the incumbents adopting versions of it as well. But this is just the start. And I wake up every morning surprised with something new in tech. So it keeps me very busy.
Before I let you go, your dream, Reddit, started at a Waffle House.
That's right.
A little bit of a kind of come to Jesus moment at a Waffle House. You have to follow your stomach and your heart sometimes, I suppose.
That's right.
What would your advice be to founders here today in Doha?
Look, I was lucky. I was taking the LSAT, so the test you got to take in order to to go to law school, to become a lawyer. And I was 30 minutes into this test, bored out of my mind. And I got hungry. It was a Saturday morning, and I went to go get waffles at the Waffle House. If you're not familiar with the Waffle House, I don't think there's any locations outside of the US. There should be, though. 24 hours, all you can eat. There's a great Anthony Bourdain video about the Waffle House. Sorry, not all you can eat, but 24 hours, all the food you can imagine. Obviously, the waffles are really good. And you know what it was? I listened to that voice inside of me that was like, you don't actually want to be here. You don't actually want to be doing this. And you know, that was in 2004. So here we are a couple decades later, and I've never heard that voice since. The only voice that I hear, and I realize how blessed I am to live this professionally, I've only had a voice encouraging me to keep doing more, to be motivated, and there's nothing I cherish more. I had two parents who I saw work jobs that they, you know, had to work. They weren't like passion projects. And I genuinely feel like I've enjoyed my work every day since. And so if you can have that luxury as a founder, yes, there's probably something wrong with you. Welcome to the club if you need to be an entrepreneur. But if you know that voice is in you, listen to it. And the sooner you listen to it, the better.
Alexis Ohanian, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you so much, Emma, for that fascinating conversation about the transformation of the sports industry. Now, our next speaker really is one of a kind. I mean, he is one of the trailblazers, a true trailblazer, the founder and CEO of Scale AI, and at just 25 years old, he became the youngest self-made billionaire in the world. Now, as we all know, ChatGPT has thrust AI into the global spotlight, positioning it as one of the most dominant trends in tech. This momentum is expected to continue through 2025, though the landscape will evolve as new technologies from China and other fast-growing regions begin to take shape. At the heart of this AI revolution is Scale AI, with a total of $1.35 billion raised and a current valuation of $14 billion. Scale AI is accelerating AI application development for major players like OpenAI, Meta, and Microsoft. To discuss what lies ahead for AI and its transformative potential, please join me in welcoming to the stage Felix Salmon from Axios in conversation with Scale AI founder and CEO Alexander Wang.
Can any nation truly win the AI race? Will China's AI leapfrog the West? Is AI the new global superpower? AI is our assistant, not the decision maker. We need to hear from the leaders and people that are shaping the AI landscape.
My name is Alexander Wang, and I'm the founder and CEO of Scale AI.
Hello, Doha. Thanks for having us. And Alex, thanks for making it all the way here for this chat. It's going to be fascinating. We're talking in a period of geopolitical chaos, I think is fair to say. And the stated title of this talk is like there is, well, actually, you just ran an ad in the Washington Post. The day before yesterday, you took out a full-page ad in the Washington Post. What did it say?
Yeah, we took out this ad the day after the inauguration. And it said, "Dear President Trump, we must win the AI war." And that was basically it. Full-page ad, those were the only words.
America must win the AI war. Wow. It's kind of a little bit terrifying. Obviously, you're an American. You went to the inauguration. I'm kind of fascinated. Can we have a quick show of hands? Like, how many people in this room would agree with Alex that America must win the AI war? 2? How many would disagree? Okay, this is not a friendly audience. This is like an overwhelmingly skeptical audience when it comes to that. So make your case, because these people need to be convinced.
Well, first off, this is something I've been consistent about, dating back to in fall of 2022, before even ChatGPT was released. I published a blog post about the AI war and how to win it from the perspective of an American, and effectively called out that, hey, it's clear that AI is going to fundamentally change the nature of national security, the nature of warfare. I think the degree to which this is true is somewhat underrated even today. And when there are these large discontinuous shifts, it's important that you acknowledge the moment, and we as in America, that we were able to be leaders in this technological change. I think other contexts, there are a number of papers and sort of reports from the CCP, from the Chinese Communist Party and the People Liberation Army, dating back to 2017 and 2018, where they speak about how they believe that this new batch of technologies, AI being sort of the central one, are an opportunity for the Chinese military to leapfrog current leaders, despite the fact that they're currently behind in their view. They see these new technologies as sort of a stepping stone or an opportunity, if they overinvest in them, to leapfrog sort of Western powers. So that's kind of the context.
And just to be clear, like, one of the sort of fun facts about Scale AI, I don't know how familiar this audience is, you're mostly known for hiring a whole bunch of humans to train up AIs, but you're also a defense tech company.
Yeah, so we think about ourselves as the humanity first AI company, and our goal is to ensure that we build AI models and applications that ultimately work for humanity. This sort of breaks down in 2 core pieces. So the first is that our data foundry, our technology, is used to power nearly every major AI model, from OpenAI to Google to Meta to XAI and many of the leading large models.
DeepSeek?
Not DeepSeek. Not DeepSeek. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit. And then we also partner very closely with large enterprises and governments to ensure that they're able to apply the technology effectively. I think important context as well. I grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico, with the birthplace of the atomic bomb, and both my parents were physicists who worked at the national lab there. So my personal background is one where it's sort of it's impossible to think about disruptive technologies as not critical to national security, or not fundamentally linked to the sort of the how technology intersects with militaries, national security, and all the like.
Basically, what you're saying is you are old enough to remember when Russia was the enemy.
I have no comment on that. But,
but no, I mean, but like, in terms of this ad that you placed in the Washington Post and what you're talking about, the CCP and the PLA, like, it is clear that you see this as a war, that's the word you used in your ad, between China and the United States. And there is going to, presumably, you want America to win this war. What is America fighting for in this war?
I think if you take a step back, right, it's very clear at the present moment there are two countries that have, in which the preponderance of AI development and AI innovation are happening. Those are the United States and China. And as DeepSeek demonstrated, it is a relatively close race. You know, obviously in the United States is where many of these innovations came from. You know, the transformer was invented in the United States, GPT was invented in the United States, RLHF was invented in the United States, test time compute was invented in the United States. That is sort of, it's very clearly the innovation hub, but Chinese technology is clearly, has caught up very quickly with models like DeepSeek or models from Alibaba and other firms. And so we're at a moment where I think if you play the tape forward on AI, you know, nearly every country in the world, or nearly every sort of company in the world, will ultimately likely build AI technology on top of either US technology stack or the Chinese technology stack. And so that's one of the, I think that's one of the most tangible sort of fronts of the war, so to speak, or the most tangible areas where you can see this AI war playing out, which is which technology stack becomes a sort of global standard for as much of the globe as possible. And you know, there have been multiple rounds of this, right? You know, if you look back to the early days of the internet and the sort of the initial waves of the internet, American technology and American platforms became the global standards. But then you look towards what happened with the Belt and Road initiatives from the CCP, and you look towards you know, the technology, Huawei and other technologies that they exported, and you look today at internet technologies, you know, TikTok and ByteDance are quite competitive actually with the US firms. And so this sort of which AI standard or which AI tech stack underpins the global order is, I think, the sort of critical question.
And as we all remember from, like, certainly since the Snowden leaks came out, like, we know what that means. If you're building on an American technology stack, that basically means the Americans know everything you're doing. And if, presumably, conversely, if you're building on a Chinese technology stack, then that means the Chinese know what you're doing. That's the stakes here. Like, you're basically, if you're in the Middle East or in Europe or in Africa, you just need to sort of pick. Do I want the Americans to have access to all of my secrets, or the Chinese? And you're saying it should be the Americans.
No, I mean, I don't really see it as that being the key distinction. I mean,
the key distinction, just to be clear, that you just laid out was who owns the technology stack. If it's not a question of which government gets to have backdoors into that technology stack, then what is that what is it that makes that important? Why does it matter who owns the technology stack?
Well, I mean, I think first, one step back. As an American, 10 out of 10 times I'm going to advocate for the American stack as a proud American. But I think in addition to that, you know, I think it's a critical question is, you know, what is the ideologies that are baked into the technologies? I mean, ultimately, if you look at large language models or many of these AI technologies, you know, there are a large number of technical decisions that have meaningful impact into how the model ultimately performs, or what is the information that the model will ultimately give, or what are the recommendations it might give to a person. And so there, you know, if you think about the AI as a particularly important technology, you know, which tech stack is actually, it boils down to a question of what ideological decisions do you want to be made in the models. And you know, I think probably the ones that matter the most to me personally are, you know, the question of free speech and the question of you know, sort of a democracy versus a communist society. And I think that these are some of the key tensions that exist between the two systems.
So this afternoon, you sat down with the communications minister here in Qatar, and you signed a pretty big deal with the Qatari government, that's right? Tell me a little bit about that deal.
Yeah, so we're partnering with the Ministry of ICT here in Qatar to enable the digital transformation of the Qatari government services in areas like education, healthcare, disaster response, and sort of the wide gamut of government services. The goal is to release and launch 50 use cases by 2029. So develop, deploy, and ultimately scale up 50 use cases. And I think what we've seen is this is an incredibly ambitious goal and an incredibly ambitious viewpoint for any government to have. And our goal is, how can AI be used to develop, what would an AI-enabled government truly look like? And that can serve as a blueprint for many nations globally. I think I applaud the government here for being so visionary and wanting to push forward at a pace that's much faster than many other governments.
And then just to come back to the main thrust of this conversation, in signing this deal and in partnering with an American company, Scale AI, to implement all of these different use cases of AI, whether it's education or healthcare or building permits or whatever, basically the Qataris are embedding that kind of American ideology into their tech stack. And I mean, were you competing against a Chinese AI company? Like, could they have gone with the Chinese instead? Was that like a profound choice that they had to make?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think our view is that ultimately, AI technology should reflect to a meaningful degree the cultural differences between various countries. This is one of the things that we actually work on very closely with the AI model developers in the United States, the OpenAIs and the Googles, et cetera, of the world, is to ensure that these AI models that are global platforms do reflect and follow, sort of reflect the cultural differences from country to country or region to region. So that's a huge part of our work. And our goal with these use cases, I think, are they're relatively uncontroversial. The goal is can we build AI tutors for every citizen in Qatar to enable better learning? That, I think, is an incredibly uncontroversial goal. Or can we enable a more efficient health system or a more effective health system? Or can we enable a more effective, basically, can you look at these agencies, these ministries, and enable them to be dramatically transformed through digital technology and through AI? I mean, that's really what we're looking at.
This, of course, you and I both live in the United States, and the place that you hear about AI being put to work transforming an agency more than anywhere else is very much Palantir in the Defense Department. You also work for the Department of Defense. I'm not going to ask you what you do for it because no one ever says anything, but one of the sort of received opinions about Palantir is that it basically has a monopoly on that business. Is that true, or are you competing with them in working for the secret bits of the US government?
We actually partner quite a bit with Palantir in a number of occasions. I mean, I think generally speaking, if you look at the US government or transforming any government, frankly, it's not really a competition between tech companies. It's a competition between the existing incumbents who, in the United States, there's defense primes or whatnot. It's really a discussion of are there opportunities for upstarts and for startups to succeed in that kind of environment? And so Palantir's obviously demonstrated that, and they've really paved the way, I think, for companies like ourselves and Anduril and others to succeed.
You've just come off a tour of Europe, and I think you just met with Narendra Modi as well. Tell me a little bit about, since you're talking to heads of state, and I'm not. What are they saying in terms of this worldview, this kind of Manichaean worldview that you have of like, there's the good guys and the bad guys, there's the Americans and the Chinese, you've got to sort of pick a side. Do they buy into that?
Well, I think there's a number of topics that are top of mind for governments when it comes to AI. So I think actually top of the list for many heads of state is kind of what we've discussed with the Qatari government, which is how do you use AI to improve government services and government efficiency? And that honestly is probably the top, the key use case or the key issue on many leaders' minds. There's also the question of how AI can provide more economic opportunity for their citizens and for their countries. So how can AI be a mechanism or sort of a vector for job growth and economic opportunity growth within the countries? That's a very key question, especially in larger countries. AI and national security is a topic. And I think the last one, which gets to what you're saying, is like, what are going to be the global AI standards? And I think there have been a few rounds of this question, obviously. There's sort of like first round of this in the EU with the EU AI Act, and the first round in the US with the former executive order. And I think this is very much a live topic as to how, what will the global AI standards emerge as. I think there's a pretty broad recognition that, there is, it's better for the world. Ultimately, it's better to the degree that we can agree upon AI standards. And so one of the areas where this topic comes up is the network of AI safety institutes, and in the UK now the AI Security Institute. And this is one of the key areas where this question comes up, because we have many countries, including the US and UK and Japan and Korea and many others, have stood up these AI safety institutes. And they all have the same goal. The goal fundamentally is how do we develop standards for this technology? How are we going to sort of ensure that we develop this technology responsibly? And it would be a tragedy if every AI safety institute or AI security institute had different standards, a different set of criteria, and a different understanding of how we do this effectively. So that's one area, for example, where the discussion of global standards comes to life.
And that's basically what everyone was doing in Paris a week or two ago. And you're an optimist about this? You think there's going to be a pretty broad consensus and alignment, and the robots are not going to take our jobs and we're all going to be much better off for AI?
An optimist about AI broadly? Yeah, no, I certainly am. Yeah, I think that I think there's a number.
Well, let me be a little bit more specific, because we're slightly running out of time. Like, are you an optimist because you think that these standards are going to be effectively implemented globally, or are you an optimist kind of anyway?
Well, it's a fair question. I think that ultimately the global AI standards are critical to ensuring that this technology will be deployed and adopted in a reasonable way quickly. That, I think, is the key question. I think regardless of the, where we land as, sort of a network of countries on that question, I think that AI will be an incredible technology, and there's incredible reason for optimism for AI as a technology.
Which is a great place to end it, but I do need to, as a good Axios journalist, I do need to end with one fun thing. So can you tell me, why does your name, Alexander, seem to be missing an E?
It truly is just the name that my parents gave me. So, it's actually been kind of I often get comments, which is, why is your name spelled like a startup? You know, why it feels like almost like a branding decision. I assure you it isn't. I assure you my birth certificate has spelled Alexander this way my whole life. Sometimes I get in Ubers and people are very, very confused. But no, I think it's you know, one of the ways I think about it is I grew up with a relatively strange name, and that sort of conditioned me or sort of made me accustomed to being a little bit different, which has been probably for the better throughout my whole life.
As for Felix, thank you for sharing, and thank you for coming on to Web Summit.
Thank you.
Do I go first? And now to officially open Web Summit Qatar, please join me in welcoming His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani, the Prime Minister of Qatar. Robbie, if you'd like to take it away. Three, two, one. We'll see you all tomorrow. I hope you enjoy your evening, and thanks for coming.
Thank you.